An escalation in anti-Semitic crime. That's how the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, has described a spate of graffiti attacks on synagogues and property in New South Wales recently. Police say an accelerant was used when two people tried to ignite a fire at a synagogue in Newtown in Sydney before spray painting it with Nazi symbols. And a synagogue in southern Sydney also had several Nazi symbols sprayed painted on its exterior on Friday. Here's a woman from Sydney's eastern suburbs reacting to her car being targeted with anti-Semitic graffiti not so long ago.
Do you mind if I ask you why you were so upset about it?
Because my father was killed in the Holocaust. This is how it started.
My father was killed in the Holocaust, and this is how it started. Powerful words, aren't they, from a woman in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. In the most recent attack, a 47-year-old man has been arrested and charged after offensive graffiti was found on a shop front in Newcastle over the weekend. That's certainly very close to home, is it not? He's due to face court today. Dr. Dvir Abramovich is the chairman of the Anti-Defamation Commission and is here with his thoughts today. Dvir, good morning. Thanks so much for coming on for a chat today.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
It's sad, and of course those rather chilling words from that lady from Sydney kind of put this all in perspective, don't they?
It does. Look, today is another heartbreaking day for our nation. It's a stark reminder that the flames of anti-Semitism, they're not just alive, Paul, but they're growing more dangerous. And, tolerating anti-Semitism is like leaving a match to burn in the dry forest. It starts small, but it has the potential to engulf everything in its path. So this is a very, very dark day for our country.
I mentioned the point about being close to home, of course, and I'm sure Novocastrians will be more alert than they possibly were before, given that the event has happened here in one of our shopping districts. We are removed, aren't we? We're referred to as the lucky country, which kind of was a tongue-in-cheek remark, of course, from Donald Horne. But it's since been used to indicate that by virtue of our remoteness, we have escaped many of the horrors of the world. Are we too detached?
We may be too detached, but I think we shouldn't mince words, Paul, and that anti-Semitism is being normalized in our country. And whether it's through hateful rhetoric online, whether it is anti-Israel propaganda, whether the cowardly acts of vandalism that we've seen, it's clear that this ancient hatred is finding new life in modern Australia. And hate thrives in silence. And when leaders and communities and institutions fail to respond decisively, it gives permission for these extremists to crawl out of the shadows. Somebody put it this way, that it's like the lid has been taken off the sewer, and all this poisonous hatred and racism and bigotry against Jews that was bubbling under the surface has now flowed onto the streets, and we are seeing it. So we are certainly no longer the lucky country when it comes to the Jewish community.
What about the use of the swastika, which of course is a Nazi symbol? We've seen it used repeatedly as the weapon of insult against our Jewish communities. It's hard to think of a more powerful and destructive tool.
Yeah, and it's hard to put into words the profound pain and outrage that these attacks on synagogues have inflicted on the Jewish community. And when you have synagogues, which are sacred spaces, places of sanctuary and prayer, and when they're defiled with the ugliest symbols of hate, this is a calculated terror. This is a direct assault on the heart of Jewish Australians. And we heard the interview with a woman who said that her, grandparents were killed in the Holocaust. For Holocaust survivors and their descendants, this is a gut-wrenching reminder of the horrors that they hope to leave behind forever. And I've spoken to Holocaust survivors, and they said to me, look, these are acts of psychological violence, but we never imagined in our lifetime that we would see the ultimate emblem of genocide and annihilation be used here, be weaponized against us. This is our worst nightmares coming alive.
Dvir, we often associate anti-Semitism with the Holocaust, of course, but it predates that by centuries. Can you give us some sort of historical context?
Anti-Semitism, is as old as civilization. It's about 3,000 years old, and it became with religious hatred. With this idea that the Jews conspired and plotted to kill Jesus. It then turned into economic anti-Semitism, then into racial anti-Semitism, of course, with the Nazis. One of the most frightening aspects about anti-Semitism, Paul, is that it's a shapeshifter. It's what we call old wine in new bottles. It's always about blaming the Jews. It's about scapegoating the Jews. It's about saying something's wrong with our society. Let's blame the Jews, and the solution is to get rid of the Jews. And we saw it with Nazi Germany, where the final solution was about exterminating, by the way, not just every German or European Jew. It was about exterminating every Jew on earth. And I think that's the danger that a lot of people don't realize, that if we turn a blind eye to anti-Semitism in our country, we are paving the way for the collapse of the inclusive, united Australia that we all cherish. And I don't want to be too dramatic, but the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just about protecting Jewish Australians. It's about safeguarding the moral backbone of our country.
Dvir, I've overheard conversations, as you probably have as well, where some people try to rationalise these kinds of violent behaviours that we're seeing in Australia, and rationalising them in context of the behaviour of Israel in the Middle East war. What's your reaction when you hear those sorts of observations?
Well, it's another lame excuse. It's another way to provide a shield for people to express their hardcore hatred of Jews. Anti-Semitism began long before Israel existed. Most people who are expressing anti-Israeli views are masquerading and camouflaging their anti-Semitism. Look, industrial strength criticism of Israeli policy is absolutely fine. In fact, if you visit Israel, you'll see that the Israeli people and the Israeli press engage with it on a daily basis. But demonizing and vilifying Israel, comparing it to Nazi Germany, blaming Jews of genocide, blaming Jews for conspiracy theories, that crosses the line. And I have to remind people that the racists and bigots that are peddling this poison will inevitably turn their sights on other communities, on Indigenous Australians, on faith groups, on the LGBTIQ plus community. Simon Wiesenthal, the Nazi hunter, used to say, it may begin with the Jews, but it won't end with the Jews. Where anti-Semitism thrives, all forms of racism dwell. So this excuse that people are putting forward, that we are simply anti-Israel, it doesn't cut the mustard. It really doesn't.
Dvir, there's this perception, of course, that we're a warm multicultural society. In the eyes of many, those from a privileged background such as myself, you'd get the feeling that we're more inclusive. But in some of our smaller communities, is that a shared feeling as the Anti-Defamation Commissioner?
Well, you can't call yourself a multicultural society when a segment of the community is being targeted and singled out and vilified on a daily basis. And that is exactly what's happened over the last 15 months. I've lived in this country for 38 years. I never questioned my place here. I always felt safe and I always felt welcomed and included. But what's happened over the last 15 months has shattered this perception that I've had. And I think in the minds of many Australian Jews, there's a prevailing feeling that we are no longer part of this country, that we are being excluded, we are being marginalized. And this is the time for our leadership to step up. Enough with the empty rhetoric, enough with condemning it. We need real action. And when synagogues are being firebombed, we know that we've crossed the line. And as I said before, anti-Semitism is being normalized and being mainstreamed. And we are seeing extremism flourishing, and we are seeing vigilance falter. And we are living in very, very dangerous times. And that's why I think that we don't need just outrage, we need a full-scale offensive.
Dr. Abramovich, thanks for your thoughts today.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.